coolest thing for me is like when you discover new music accidentally,
Oh, yes.
you know,
It's the
and
best feeling in the world.
right. And that happened last weekend. And I've been like nerding out on this band ever since. And I like immediately threw it on my Instagram story. And it's the band Folder.
Yes.
And they were two records and they were done. They were from Italy, early mid 2000s. And I found them because I was looking for Stuck Mojo. And
Right.
there was a crossover track or something. So it said,
Yeah.
Folder Stuck Mojo. And I'm like, who's Folder?
Right.
So I, of course, clicked on it, and I think I've listened to the entire first record probably a solid 5 times, all the way
Dude.
through, back to front.
Yeah, because again, not to keep plugging our Spotify or whatever, but doesn't matter
Sure.
because we don't make any money off or anything like that. But
Right.
again, check out the We Were Allowed on Spotify.
Mm.
But you put up Folder, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
because again, I saw Stuck Mojo. I'm like, okay, sweet, good idea. And then you put up Folder. I'm like, who the hell is Folder? I've never heard of this either. And I was like, man,
Yeah.
Dan like really knows like some dark alleys of the new metal genre. But then I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
How the hell have I never heard about these guys? Because sometimes exactly what you're talking about, you uncover some band that you like, I didn't realize they existed.
Mhm.
And but usually it's like, they're like almost like a local band, they maybe put $5,000 in the recording or something like that, which kind of sometimes adds to that element. But that
Mhm.
Folder, both of their records are so well produced and very
Yeah.
crisp. And I was like, dang, somebody put a lot of effort into this and stuff. And it was shocking to me how both of us have never heard of them before.
Yeah. It's wild, like I I feel like I talk negatively about Spotify enough that
Yeah.
it was probably time that I paid them a compliment of
There
some
you go.
kind. And the dark alley, that's definitely it. It gives you access to literally everything and anything that's
Right.
out there.
Absolutely.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right.
It's probably right up the middle, but this is one of the good things. It's like you can find bands like that by accident, just by surfing through it.
Yep.
And yeah, I literally geeked out on that band.
Yeah.
And immediately, like, I was like, full transparency, I was mowing the lawn, and like I stopped and shut off the mower and was like, add to We Were Loved Ones playlists, immediately. So but yeah, I was just like, man, that really is cool. And I'm like, because it's completely new metal, like all the way down to the DJ,
Totally.
the whole thing, like everything.
A
we
lot
said
of
about new metal.
DJ. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's good.
And he's good.
Like,
exactly. It's not just a little bit of background noise. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's good stuff.
like everybody's in their lane.
Yeah.
And they're doing it well. And
Right.
they hit the gas, and
Oh, so
everybody was
fun.
just exceptional. So
So
it was,
fun.
highly recommend it.
Yeah,
to everybody.
definitely.
So,
Yeah, if you have never listened to Folder, check them out because especially if you're into like Limp Bizkit, Primer,
mhm.
stuff like that, where it's like the fun hip hop, total hip hop, rap rock, party music. If you're in a bad mood and you put Folder on, you will be in a good mood. It is so much fun. Like I immediately, as soon as I saw that, that I went up there and I listened to that song that you posted, I listened to like probably 2 or 3 times. I'm like, no way. And then I went to the album and I just directly, boom, listened to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Started sending it out to friends and my boys, my sons. I'm like, guys, you got to check this out.
Yeah.
And they're like immediately like, where do these guys come from? I'm like, I know. It's like, holy crap, but yeah, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Maybe at some point we'll do a deep dive on them, but
that'd be fun.
like I said,
because we need to explore
two
that.
Two records and they were out. So,
yeah.
But it's when you start talking about that time period, it was, I think the first one was 2000, 2001, and then 2003 was the second one. So it's like, okay, end of that tour cycle, you're hitting 2005, and that's kind of when things started to go sideways for the genre. So
Yep.
So that's probably why, because I don't think they ever made it to the States. I don't remember ever hearing about them.
Blows my mind.
So yeah. Well, it's just the coolest feeling ever. It's like it was like going into a record store and like finding, a CD like at a listening station or something. And oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. Like that happened a handful of times to me and kind of, my friend group. And, like that was that feeling. And I'm like, oh man, I'm starting to find all the little things that, the little nuances and similarities to.
That is such a good comparison because
back
that
when.
just doesn't happen anymore. Like you would go to, what was the name of that store in the mall all the time that
There was Sam Goody, there was Musicland, there was
there's probably quite a few of them, but either
yeah.
way, I remember going to Westroads in Omaha and there was a store there and you just walk in and again you just have those stations that you could just listen to whatever. And I found so many new bands like that occasionally you even have some local bands on there and it was really awesome, and so and so that was always great. And you just don't get that anymore unless if you're like, Spotify and Pandora, you have like the suggestions, I guess. That's still still a thing.
The old algorithm.
The old algorithm, exactly. But I tell you what, mine is effed up. It's like
mine's all new metal now.
Yeah,
so.
I was gonna say, yeah. It's like, yeah, mine is heavily new metal now. But yeah, for the longest time, it was just like, Jeff, I need to sit you down. I have no idea what to suggest to you. Like, it's like you listen to Whitechapel, Ace of Base, Vanilla Ice.
You're pinging too far to each side. You need to calm down.
Exactly. You're breaking Spotify. You need to stop. We don't know what to do.
Yeah, we don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
But I remember, being in a music land, I believe it was in Kansas City. Do you remember the band Sister Soleil?
Oh yeah.
I was in Kansas City in a music store with a bunch of my friends. We were down there doing something, I remember. But I mean, I think the record had just come out, their first record, and they were playing it in the store. And we were like, whoa, who's this?
Yeah.
And they told us, and I think all of us bought a copy at that moment. We listened to it all the way home, and it was a thing for however long. And I bring that up, she's top of mind because, she's on some friends podcast here coming up pretty soon. And, and she was kind of Omaha adjacent. They were from Des Moines.
Right.
So they were kind of part of that whole thing. So, but yeah, it's crazy how that used to work. And
yeah,
I guess it was a light bulb moment for me. It's like, oh, this is how it works nowadays.
Yep, absolutely.
As I grab my cane and
as you just scurry across
to the backyard,
walker and the tennis balls on the bottom.
Exactly.
Yep. That's funny.
But yeah, so looking for Stuck Mojo, that was kind of intentional, and it kind of brings me to kind of the main topic of today's episode. And that was my conversation with Joshua Toomey from Primer 55. He brought up Stuck Mojo, and I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about Stuck Mojo.
Yeah.
So that's what started the whole thing,
Right.
I was lucky enough to get a few minutes with Joshua before they played the first stop of a 7-day run in Lincoln, Nebraska. So, but can't say enough good things about him. He was the nicest guy. We had a great conversation about all things Primer, his podcasting career with Talk Toomey and the Dave Ellefson Show. And it was a great conversation. So I'm excited to finally bring it to you guys.
Heck yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So just want to say thanks to Joshua and hope you guys enjoy.
Guys, what's going on? I am sitting out on the side of the Bourbon Theater in Lincoln, Nebraska, with none other than Primer 55's Joshua Toomey. How's it going, man?
Doing good, man. I'm excited to be out on the road again. First show of the tour. So, man, I guess we're going to see how it goes tonight.
Right. No, I'm excited to see it. It's been quite a while since I've seen Primer. And I think the last time I saw Primer, I opened for the band. My band opened up in Omaha. Pretty crazy days. That would have been a 102, I think. So it was way back when.
Might have been me.
Yeah. So, and actually, that's something I wanted to kind of get into first before we talk about the tour. Kind of, can you go into and talk about how you came to be in the band?
So this is, since this is a podcast, I'll tell the story.
Yeah.
But the main part of it was I had a band out of Nashville, Tennessee. Our guitar player at the time couldn't tour because he had a real job. So my drummer and I went and followed Korn's Sick and Twisted tours. That's about 2,000 selling CDs in the parking lot. Just tried to promote as best we could. Stained was on that tour with Korn. They had a night off in Louisville. And so we were like, all right, well, we'll just drive to Louisville and, do the same thing, sell the CDs or whatever. The Stained ended up canceling, but Primer 55 still played. And I had heard of Primer, but I didn't really know much about them. So we stuck around, watched the show, great show. And then after the show, Bobby and Jason, like, just kind of like walked past me, and like they both had that like air about them, like, the air changes of the room kind of
Sure.
when you walk into it. And I remember even like then I was like, man, whatever they're doing, I want to be a part of that. And a few months later, on the PRP, back in, well, I guess it's still around, but they posted that Primer was looking for a bass player. And I had a relationship with the guy that ran that website. So I hit him up. He hooked me up with Bobby. I ended up auditioning in between Introduction to Mayhem and the new release. I like helped audition drummers back then. And then it kind of came down to time for time for the band to get together to go out just to promote the new release. And that's when they got Preston in the band, and Preston actually knew Kobe. So that's like how that whole thing came together. So they went with that direction. And then about 6-8 months later, I quit the band that I was in at the time. And I just emailed a few people that I knew in the industry, and I was like, Bobby was one of them, a couple of other people. And he actually got back to me and said, hey, after this next Primer tour, you want to start a side band. He had this kind of side band that he wanted to do. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So no matter, he's like, well, and this is back before being able to even like send MP3s and stuff. He was like, drive up to Louisville, I'll play you the music, and tell me what you think. And it was honestly one of those things where he could have played me anything and I would have been in, just because I wanted to work with him. So we talked about it, and when I get back from the tour, we'll start this band. And then about 3 days before the tour started, he called me and he goes, do you want to be in Primer? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, here's the set list, learn it. We start the tour in like 3 days. So yeah, I just like immediately fell into Primer. Learned the set. Our first show was in Brooklyn, New York. We were on tour with Dope and Skin Lab, and a couple of other bands. Did that for a couple of months. And then we did come back. We actually started the side band. Primer kind of went on like a hiatus for a little bit, and then we got back together in 2007. A label had come out and put out a rarities and B-sides kind of record from Primer. We went out and toured that. And then while I was on that tour, I had my son was about 2 at the time. And, we were out. Nu metal was not cool at the time. We were playing, Joe's Bar and Grill for like 8 people. And his mom called me from the road, and I could hear him in the background crying. And, it was one of those things I was just like, you know what? I got to like stop this and go be a dad. And then, yeah, so, I mean, I left back then just saying I need to take this next tour off, and then I never came back. And then, yeah, so then over the years, obviously with the podcast, things like that, I've become synonymous with Primer. I even saw somebody post one day that I got tagged in something about Primer related, and a fan commented also. It says, I've never seen the third bass player of the band become so synonymous with the band. But as I've been kind of flying the flag of the band for the last 10 years doing the podcast, backs up at Not Fest and things like that. So and then I'm assuming we'll get into like us getting back together and stuff. And it kind of it Bobby and I had talked about doing stuff all the way back to 2020. Because the 20th anniversary of Introduction to Mayhem would have been 2020. But obviously there was something going on in 2020 that kind of put a kibosh on all of that.
Yeah.
And then we talked a little bit about here and there over the years, like, hey, do you want to do a show? Let's try to book a show. And then it just never really got anywhere. And then Bobby had the health issues. And up until a few months ago, he had told me, like, if this certain woman calls you, I want you to be the one to break the news. And I'm like, I don't want to be the one to break that news that you've passed away. And so I truly thought, like, this is the last I'm going to see of Bobby. And then he reached out. He moved to Dallas. They've got some amazing doctors there, I guess. He kind of went in to see a doctor about, just some minor stomach pain. And they're like, you need to go into surgery like right now. And it's the surgery that we can't do at this hospital. So they had to like rush him to another hospital. But he came out the other side, man. And he reached out to me and he goes, all right, man, let's do it. I'm like, all right. So, but it was back to let's book a show. And then I reached out to Mikey from Snot, similar situation, band from the late 90s, early 2000s, singer passed away, kind of the legend of the band's kind of grown over the years. So I reached out to Mikey and I was like, hey man, who's booking your shows? He sent me the booking agent. I just kind of cold emailed the booking agent. Would you like to book some Primer 55 25th anniversary shows? Thinking either A, he would have no idea who we were and like get out of my emails, or B, know who we were and probably do it. And thankfully it was the latter. And it's been pretty crazy, man. Like we originally talked about just kind of doing a weekend of shows, which turned into this little run of a week of shows. And then it turned into, we're doing a Smile Empty Soul tour in November. And then we get the offer for Welcome to Rockville, and everything that keeps happening is just blowing my mind. Like even today, seeing the Primer, name up on a marquee, I'm just like, I never thought I would see this again.
Yeah, I mean that's wild. So kind of going into a little bit more of the singers passed away, that kind of scenario. Not having ever gone through that, does that change your relationship to the music?
Actually, it's funny you bring that up, because I was thinking about that, because we're playing songs that there's one song that we're playing that was never played by them. The band had never played Hate live. And then, there's a ton of songs that I never played live because, we did, part of Introduction to Mayhem, part of the new release. So there were songs I never had to learn before too. And it was kind of, actually, I wanted to ask this question to Bobby, because obviously he was way closer to Jason than I ever was. I mean, I was close to him, but I wasn't close to him. He was a very quiet person, very to himself, maybe kind of had a wall up or something. I always say he was like a gentle giant kind of dude. He would scream and yell and cuss and everything else on stage, but off stage he was just like kind of to himself and just kind of like, oh, we need to go over here. Okay. He wasn't the typical lead singer. But yeah, I mean, just kind of diving back into those songs and kind of listening to Jason's lyrics and hearing Jason's voice so much, because, as soon as we talked about doing these shows, like I ran the album like daily for like 3 months, because I was like, all right, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Yeah, it's just like kind of getting back into the songs and like hearing Jason, and like I said, just kind of diving into the lyrics and, maybe something, maybe a song here they'll remind me of a past tour, just little things here and there. Definitely miss him. I mean, I love Donnie, but, I even said on like early podcasts, I was like, I want, before he passed away, I was like, I would love for Jason and Bobby to get back together and do something, it doesn't even have to be Primer. I just want to see those two guys work together again. And I think that they had, mended fences there towards the end. And they probably could have done something. I think Jason would love the fanfare that the band's getting right now, like the fact that people care. I wish he was here to see all of that, because I mean, he was. I guess it's weird being in a band with him and then seeing people's reaction to him, like not the voice of a generation, but just being one of those key voices of that band, because he was a very unique singer. He had a very unique voice. There was screams, raps, sings. There was so many layers to Jason's voice that made it very unique. So I think he would have really appreciate the the outpouring from the fans and just people caring at all, I guess, at this point.
Yeah. No, that's I think when something like that happens, it's a weird situation, and it's people kind of have certain feelings about those kinds of things, and I mean, even now with Rush kind of doing it, you know, and after, you know, our initial conversation, you know, I was one of hopefully far up enough in line to get a pre-sale code for those tickets too, but I doubt it. But yeah, it's music means a lot to the people that means a lot to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, being able to connect with it, you know, after somebody's has passed, you know, being able to do that again is a big deal for a lot of people. So, so certainly appreciate you guys even doing this.
No, it's, I think, were you guys talking about that you went to the Pantera reunion stuff?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of, I'm, you know, a massive Pantera fan.
For sure.
I saw Pantera like 10 times, 10, 12 times in the 90s. Like that was like, you know, one of the reasons, you know, thankfully, you know, watching those home videos and stuff, that's why my band has home videos, because, you know, we watch those guys do stuff like that. And I know when they announced the initial dates and the band and everything for Pantera, I immediately was just like, I'm going to be on board with this, because, you know, there's definitely, I have a lot of friends that are massive Pantera fans too, that, you know, like, oh, this isn't the real Pantera. I'm like, everybody knows it's not the real Pantera, but, you know, it's also fun to go see those songs loud and live and, you know, just being played again. And my wife and I went to the Indianapolis shows, and one of the first shows of the kind of the return. And we go to the show, and it's like, you know, we got there a little bit early. It was like 4 p.m. People are grilling out, pre-gaming beers, throwing the football. It looked like a Pantera show from the 90s. Like, you get there at the amphitheater, and there's tons of people. Went in, and, you know, the curtain drops, and just, you know, a new level kicks in, and I'm immediately like, you know, I had some, you know, few drinks in me, but I mean, I'm like getting teary-eyed watching it. Like, because that band meant so much to me, and then, you know, you just never thought you would see it again in any kind of form. But the one thing is after the show, we were walking out, and everybody had a smile on their face in the crowd. Everybody was so happy. Like, people were just like, oh my God, that was as good as the 90s. You know, just like, people were pumped. And so, like, it's like everybody online hates it, but like when you go see it in person, everybody's having a good time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I unfortunately missed my opportunity to go see them, but Jeff did go and said something very similar. You know, said it was amazing. And I mean, you know, when you have, you know, when you're playing in a band, and for folks who don't, you know, play music or play in a band, you know, it's hard for them to kind of wrap their head around it, you know, but it becomes bigger than the people in the band, and it becomes something else. And that's what people are connecting with, you know what I mean? And it's taken me a while to get there, but I finally got there. So I want to talk a little bit about, you know, because, you know, me being a bass player as well, I want to kind of chat gear for a few minutes, kind of geek out on that for a minute. So I got to ask you, why Jackson basses?
Because of the podcast with David Ellefson.
I wasn't going to go directly there, but yeah.
He's going to call this guy Jackson. But in all honesty, like I had, I within the last few years bought a Thunderbird, like a Gibson Epiphlone Thunderbird, and just loved the shape of it and the sound of it and everything else. And then when I was started the podcast with Ellefson, he was like, you got to check out the Kelly Bird from Jackson. I was like, all right. And they actually sent me one, so that just kind of sold me.
Sure.
But you know, as soon as I got it, I was like, oh man, this is awesome. And then obviously getting hooked up with them, and, you know, grabbing a couple of extras. Yeah, it's just a killer bass, in all honesty. You know, it's a super metal bass. I'm heavy heart, so
for sure.
But yeah, so that's the Jackson side. So that's, you know, it was a connection that I had, and it well.
Fair enough. Now I'm excited here. What are we playing through?
Another thing we got, Bobby and I are both playing Black Star amps. Another connection through David Ellefson. His guitar player in some of his side stuff plays Black Star. And when I was because I mean, the thing with this tour was Bobby and I kind of both started this out at zero, you know, like over the, I mean, I had a couple of basses, but I didn't have an amp. I didn't have anything. Bobby really didn't have much either. And so we were kind of both starting at ground zero. And honestly, if it wasn't for Black Star kind of coming through, we would be way in the hole for all of this. We're, much less than we are, much more than we are now already. But yeah, Black Star came out, and they were just kind of like, what do you like? What sounds do you like? And I'm like, I've always played, like Ampeg, SVTs and stuff like that.
Sure.
So they're like, all right, we got something for you. They're like, they send it to us, and they kind of send it like, just a handshake agreement. If you like it, play it. If you don't, whatever. And I got it, got it in the, got it shipped to the house, got it out of the box, and right out of the box, I just like hit one note, and I was like, Jesus Christ, this is awesome. And then same with like, we were doing the rehearsals for the steward, and Bobby sounds great. Like they definitely came through with some killer amps, and I'm not just saying that because they sent it to me. I'm like, I've never been a huge like gearhead or like dive into like actually this sounds good, but it's because even going into the store, I'm like, Bobby, are we gonna amps? We're gonna go fractals? We're gonna go anything else? Because I've been dealing a little bit with that. Back in Louisville, I do, there's a group of guys that do like, they call it WWLO Zemo and WWLO Zoo Metal, which is obviously, they do, live, kind of like live karaoke type thing, but it's all planned out. It's not just a regular karaoke thing, but they do everything the original key, and, they get all the original tones and everything else. And that was the first I'd ever really dealt with the amp, what is it, like the modified, what's the word I'm looking for? Modeling. There we go. Yeah. So like, that's the first time I ever dealt with that. I was like, oh shit, like, this is awesome. But Bobby's like, he's so like punk rock at heart. He's like, we're just going to throw and go every night. Cause then we were, even our drummer was talking about click tracks and everything else. And he's like, fuck that.
Yeah. I mean, I tell you what, I was resistant to playing to a click, in my ears, and it takes a long time to get used to that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if one thing is off, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It kind of, I mean, ear protection wise, I love it now, but and those, when we first started, it was a pain in the ass, to be honest with you. So I can't say I blame them. But any pedals, any effects?
No, I mean, no, the only, there's like a little bit of the Black Star has like an overdrive channel that I can turn on and off. That I will use a little bit on it. There's a couple of songs that have little bass parts here that are a little bit more overdriven than the rest of it. But man, I've always just really been more of a plug straight into the head and go, like, no frills,
Yeah, for sure. No, I used to be the same way, and then I kind of got into effects, and now with everything going digital, and neural DSP, things like that, it's easy to get lost in all that stuff,
right?
But then you go back to a classic like an SVT through an 810 Ampeg cab. It's like, okay, now I remember why I did this in the first place. But yeah. So. Well, cool. I want to kind of talk about the podcast stuff for a bit. Can you kind of go into how you got into podcasting?
Yeah. I started a job that was like, in a building that didn't get very good internet service at the time, like your phone. I mean, this was 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And so because I was listening to like streaming radio and stuff, I guess, at the time. And then when I went in, and I couldn't listen to my streaming radio anymore, so I was like, well, let me check out this podcast stuff. I mean, this was still like 2014, I guess. So I mean, it's still podcasts that have been around for a while, but they still hadn't kind of hit their boom yet. And I listened to, I just listened to like Joshua Show and Kevin Smith stuff. I mean, just the big stuff, even like the old Rogan and Nerdist, like just kind of all the big ones at the time. And I listened to him for about a year. It finally hit me, and I was like, I could do this, because I mean, it's not overproduced. It's just an interview. And through Primer and other bands I played with over the years, I had a pretty decent, contact list in my phone. So I hit up a few of them. I just kind of texted them. I was like, hey, if I started a podcast, would you come on? And everybody said yes. And so I literally sat one day and was just like, I think I'm going to start a podcast. And then I go, I think I'm going to call it either Talk to Me or Speak to Me. And I'll say use Talk to Me. Ordered like a $25 USB mic off Amazon, and then used my phone, like a call recorder app on my phone to do the phone interviews, and just kind of threw them together, and never really had a, hey, this is what this podcast is going to be, like the intro episode, like this is what we're going to talk about. I literally, my first episode was just like, all right, guys, this week on the podcast, like I've been doing it for, and I just kind of jumped right in. The first few episodes, I think a few of them would take it down because they do sound like garbage. But, actually, Bobby came on, Bobby can do Primer and Soulfly. And Virus from Dope was an early episode because we toured with those guys. And then I kind of grew up around Chris Cale from 5-3 Death Punch. So, kind of within the first 10 episodes, pretty decent names on there. So I could actually reach out. So when I started to reach out to other people, it's like, hey, I've already had, guys from Soulfly, 500 Death Punch on the podcast. You could kind of word that however you wanted to. And then I just kind of built it, built it from there, and then just kind of sticking with it. Learning the thing I do with the gear would be like anytime that anybody took a photo of their studio, or like say somebody's, even like Rogan or something where you could see what they were using. Like, what mic is that? Like, or that's an SM7B. I need to get those, and what editing software, things like that, and kind of built it up from there. So I mean, now I have just so much podcast gear, it's nuts. But and half of it I don't even use anymore. But it was funny, like as the podcast was growing, technology was kind of moving along with it. So now we're down to, we're all the way up to, I'm sure you can take this off your phone, throw it through some sort of AI software, and it's gonna sound like we're in the, in a world-class studio. But yeah, it was all trial and error, and it was all on the fly. And it was really no plan. I always joke, I always thought like it would be like for my friends and me, but what I realized is my friends don't necessarily listen like there's an actual audience for it, because your friends will be like, yeah, it's cool, and they'll support you, but they're not like listening every week, but there are great. But there are people out there that I'm judging by the numbers, I'm sure that never once reached out to me, but know everything about me in my life, just from listening each and every week. But yeah, I mean, so that's kind of how I got into it. And then, it just kind of grew from there. And then, I guess just kind of being cool and talking to people, I met a guy named Terry Beezer, who had done the That's Not Metal podcast for a long time. He was doing a bunch of stuff, and he had actually started working with Knotfest during the pandemic. They took the knotfest.com and the Knotfest YouTube because they couldn't do any festivals at the time. So they wanted to become like more multimedia. And they actually had a pretty crazy plan of taking a Twitch channel and kind of doing like an MTV style thing. So they would have programming from like 4 to midnight, Monday through Friday. Everybody got about a 2-hour block. Some people were every day, some people were once a week. And Bees actually reached out to me and said, hey man, would you want to do a show for Knotfest? And again, I'm like, whatever Bees wants me to do, I'll do it because I like that guy. So, and he reached out, and they wanted to do kind of like a throwback Thursday, talking about, having like new metal guys on, things like that. And so I got the first interview because I kept pushing the podcast on them. I'm like, hey, I've also got this podcast over here too. And they were like, all right, well, let's just wait till we get this off the ground. And after my first interview, they're like, all right, we want the podcast too. And I was like, all right, cool. And then the Twitch stream slowly died out, but the podcast stayed with them. And I worked for Knotfest for about 4 years. Actually, when they did the Knotfest Iowa a few years ago, it came out, we did a full on live Twitch stream throughout that whole thing. And Knotfest was always great. They were always super nice to me, and it was great working for them. They definitely paid well. Super cool guys over there. Definitely, but it just kind of ran its course at some point. And then, it kind of just moves me into, I keep talking about it, that this year was, the 10-year anniversary of the podcast. And I told my wife late last year that I was like, it's been 10 years. It's just, let's just kind of end at a good spot, go out and go graze in the pasture or whatever. And so I talked about just kind of shutting it all down in September. And then back in January, I interviewed Ellefson, which I've interviewed him probably 5 or 6 times over the years, a couple times in person. Just one of the random people that were in my phone that I could text every once in a while. Just had, a tertiary relationship with, not like best friends, but, we definitely knew who each other were. And so he came on the podcast in January, and I told him, I was just like, why don't you do your own podcast? He's like, and I kind of pitched him on an idea, because I told him, every time you say anything, blabbermouth, DRP, Loudwire, like everybody picks it up. And I was like, you should be getting paid for those clicks. And I'd actually pitched him on like a different idea than what we ended up doing, but he was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's do it. And I was like, oh shit. And so I remember I got off that phone call, the interview, whatever, and I go upstairs to my wife and I'm like, I think I'm doing a podcast with David Ellefson now. Honestly, it's been amazing. Being a bass player, that was David was one of my hero, so back in the day, it was like Megadeth, Metallica, everything. So watching him play bass was one of the reasons I wanted to play bass. And then Cliff and Jason Newsted and David Ellefson. It's actually funny. I met David Ellefson in like 1995. They were doing Megadeth was doing like a Megadeth canned food drive, and if you donated like 10 pounds of food to the Second Harvest Food Bank, you got this backstage pass. So me and a couple of my friends did it. And it was like kind of everybody was in a row, and then like all of Megadeth just kind of came down the road, like signing stuff. We don't even. Yeah. But it was so cool. When I was like 15. So back then I was
sure.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just it's a very surreal podcast to be a part of. Even down to the point where, when Primer was starting to get back together, David's like, call this guy at Jackson, call this guy at SIT Strings, call this guy at Blackstar. Like, he was like kind of pushing me in the right direction. And it's easy to be like, hey, David Ellefson told me. It's not just be cold emailing these people. But yeah, he's been, and you have a co-host, so it's like, you understand working with somebody and trying to get times right. Like, hey, can we record Thursday night? Wow, so I got shit to do. Like, it seems like we've actually worked very well together with, being able to record, working together, getting guests on, things like that. It's funny how many people, like, they don't know me. Like, they know David, and it's the David Ellefson Show. So a lot of people do come in, who is this guy? Why is he like that? So many comments, people are just like, why? What is this Joshua guy? Why is he here? He has no connection to Megadeth or David Ellefson. And I just want to be like, I edit the show. I created the show. I booked the show.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm a lot of times I do feel like I'm kind of more of an on-screen producer with them. Because we'll have guests on, like Chris Poland of Megadeth, or his old bass tech came on, or like an old friend from, he grew up with, that kind of, that moved out to California with him, that kind of started Megadeth. Like, those dudes, like, when they start talking, like, I truly have nothing to say. I kind of sit there and I'm like, all right, guys, I guess I'll go do something else now. But yeah, it's either people like don't know why I'm there. One dude actually did kind of come through one day, and he goes, you're the voice. You're the voice of us, the fan. I was like, all right, I like that. I like the way they said that. I'll take that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been pretty amazing, man. Just trying to get that together. And this year's been nuts anyway. Because like I said, I was gonna like quit everything, and then all of a sudden I've got a podcast with David Ellefson. Bobby calls me, band's back together. I bought a website called metalnexus.net that I'm getting done. And then obviously Talk Toomey just turned 10 years old. It's just like, I'm doing more now than I ever have. And I'm just like, all right, well, I guess it was trying to get out, and it pulled me back in like tenfold.
Sure, man. That's how it works.
Yeah,
for some stupid reason. What's your favorite episode thus far?
Of mine or David?
Either, both.
Man, that's a good question. I mean, I always go back to I interviewed Jason Newsted for the 30th anniversary of the Blackout, the box set that they put out, and that one meant a lot to me, not only because Jason Newsted, but it also meant a lot to me because that was the Blackout was what got me into Metallica. I was 12 years old at the time. I was into like Kiss and stuff like that, kind of growing up, but I didn't really get any heavier than that because I didn't really know there was much heavier than that. And then obviously the Enter Sandman video comes out, it's that true, and like all that stuff like starts popping up, and I'm like, oh, I like this. Whatever this is, I like it. And I really, the Black Album was what pulled me into Metallica. And then, you've got 4 albums before that to go back to. And then so yeah, just honestly, yeah, just so when Jason Newsted like pops up on the screen, like I'm just like, oh my
I can imagine.
Yeah, so it was pretty nice, and I got an hour with him, and he told great stories, and yeah, he was just super nice. I mean, he's Jason Newsted. He's just super cool to begin with. But yeah, it's just stuff like that. I mean, honestly, even the first time I interviewed David Ellefson was like episode 40 something or 36 or something. It was early in the podcast, and that was when I was just doing phone interviews. And I even remember like the phone ringing and like, shit, David Ellefson, you hear the voice on the other side, and you're like, oh shit, it is him. But I mean, that's the one thing is all, even to this day, like even when Ellefson and I do podcasts and Dave Lombardo pops on, or even just Gary Holt or anybody. We did John Bush the other day that's not out yet, or
nice.
Just any of those dudes. Like, I mean, I'm 46 now, but like every time those dudes pop on the screen, I revert immediately back to like 13-year-old me. Like, oh my god.
yeah. No, I'm definitely a part of that generation too. I just turned 46 myself. So yeah, all those guys were huge influence, on me too, as a guitar player turned bass player, who, I mean, I know, Newsted, clearly was an influence, but, the Metallica, kind of that whole thing, and Dave, who else?
I mean, I guess when you kind of go back to that stuff, I mean, there's a lot of dudes that like maybe want to play. The one thing is actually I was not a guitar player turned bass player. I was actually a bass player because when I was younger, I wanted to be a drummer, and my dad's friends had a Southern rock tribute band, and they were rehearsing one night, and my dad took me, and I get there, and I was like, all right, I'm going to play the drums when I get there. And the drum kit was left-handed. And I was like, what? And so the bass player handed me his bass, and I just sat there hitting the E string, like rumbling the room. And I was like, oh, this is power. I need this. Yeah. And we didn't have, much money at the time. My dad was a single dad raising me, and, we were like poor beyond poor. Luckily I was able to save some allowance and Christmas money and stuff like that. And got a cheap, it was like a Memphis P-bass copy, which actually I found out recently when I was watching an interview, that was also Les Claypool's first bass was a Memphis P-bass copy. I was like, oh, like not that we're on the same level, but it's just kind of cool to hear somebody else kind of at the same starting points. But as for bass players, I never really got into Guns N' Roses as much as some people. I think I kind of grew up in like you picked either Metallica or Guns N' Roses kind of thing. And but the more I dove into like Duff's playing, I was like, it actually reminds me more of how I like to play bass, like kind of a little bit more punk rock, a little bit more, I don't know, just the way he phrases his bass lines and things like that. So I've grown a much more appreciation of Duff over the years. I mean, some of my favorite bass players over the years, just obviously Chi from Deftones. That was a big one kind of growing up. Definitely not like Fieldy. Trying to think. Yeah, just I don't know. Like even down to like David Vincent from like Morbid Angel. Just I don't know. It's like Steve DiGiorgio, like when death and all that stuff. Just stuff like that. on Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons more for the show than the.
Right.
Gene is honestly a really great bass player. You can really listen to.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the first things I remember seeing as a kid too. Was, I got into Kiss when I was like 9 or 10, and watching those old home videos, and his bass solo where he's just hitting the bass and blood's coming. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I need to be that guy.
Yeah. So I gotta ask, since we're talking about Gene Simmons, would you pay the $12,500 to be his tour assistant?
No, it's funny I went to see Ace Frehley in 1995 on there was right before the reunion. It was Ace and Peter. Peter was opening for Ace at a small club, and I think it was $25 to meet Ace. And I was just like, there's no way I would ever pay any amount to meet anybody. Because back then, me and my friends, we would go and hang out by the buses. And we were those punchy kids that just sat there for hours.
Same.
And waited for people to come off the bus and be like, hey, so, is anybody up there? Could you sit here around, please?
Yeah, oh yeah.
But yeah, so it was crazy to me back then to think to pay to meet somebody. And then now we went and saw Ace Frehley a few months ago. And it was $500. But that's the crazy thing about it. All their shirts were $50 a piece. Every dude at that concert had 3 shirts over their shoulders. And that's the reason that, hopefully Ace his health is good, and hopefully he's getting the help that he needs and stuff, because he was not in a good place. We left after 4 or 5 songs. My wife's not a Kiss fan, but she was like, this guy is fucked up. Yeah. So hopefully he's getting the help that all this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a massive Kiss fan, and Ace and everybody's one of the reasons I, like I said, wanted to play is just seeing those guys larger than life as a kid.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's wild, man, and kind of going back to something that you said earlier, when you feel the bass, it kind of okay, I get it now.
Right.
And I'm into this now, because I kind of, fell into it, buddy's band needed a bass player, and that was 20 years ago, and I'm still doing it. So, but I know we're looking at doors here, so I want to be respectful of your time. So I kind of want to end with one last question. Out of, kind of the whole span of nu metal, what is one band that you would recommend to folks that they probably haven't heard of? It's all good.
Man, what is something? There was some random stuff here and there. Obviously, if you're gonna kind of get into some of the stuff that kind of got into nu metal, make sure that everybody needs to go check out the early Stuck Mojo stuff. And there was a random band Bionic Jive. They were kind of some of the first rap dudes with the metal band.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anything running around that's that you need to check out. Honestly, with all the bands kind of popping back up, it's wild to see a Tribe Called Logic kind of doing stuff again. Obviously, Kitty over the last couple of years have been doing a lot more, and we'll to see Snot. And the Union Underground was on the thing. See those Spine Shanks. Spine Shanks is a band that I think that everybody needs to check out. Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's Primer 55 probably giving this.
Sure.
I think Primer falls into that category because they're kind of the ultimate if you.
Yeah. For sure. Well, awesome, man. Well, I will let you get back to work. I appreciate you taking the time, and looking forward to the show, man. All right. We'll see you.
So there's that.
Yeah, there you go. So there's that. I want to say big thanks to Joshua, and hope the rest of the tour and their upcoming tour with Smile Empty Soul goes really, really well. They just announced that not too long ago, so good to see him back out on the road, and sounds like they're excited to be there.
I agree, and I think the other thing is I hope that it goes beyond Smile Empty Soul. You know what I mean? I think the world needs more Primer 55 and more nu metal in general. And I think that it's cool of what they're doing to revitalize themselves and get back out there. I know Bobby, had some health issues and stuff, and hats off to him, for getting through all that. And, please know you're in our prayers. But yeah, it's cool that he kicked what he was getting through, and he's getting back out there, and he's given another run. And I hope it's a very, very long run. I hope they keep going. And, maybe we hear some new Primer 55 music, all that stuff. It'd be really, really cool. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, they sounded amazing that night. We, as you guys just heard, we talked a little bit of gear, and, I can safely say that the Black Star stuff is amazing. And, he's got me thinking about Jackson basses. It's like, I've never played a Jackson bass before, but now I kind of want to. And I did see today on social media that they just partnered with Black Star. So that's very cool.
That is really cool.
So congratulations to Bobby and Joshua on that. And excited to hear more. So just want to say a quick thanks to Joshua Toomey for taking the time to chat with me, and we'll keep rolling on.
Awesome. Okay.
Cool.
Until next time.
See ya.
Thanks, everyone. Good journey.